Good evening, everybody. I'm the second negative speaker, and I'm going to first start by disputing the claim that the Electoral College was made sort of on the fly and apparently wasn't really designed to function for so long. And I just want to reiterate that it has worked for 200 years, therefore, even if it was an accident, it was an accident of brilliance. Now, I'd like to go on to talk about their case on the minority elect winning, winning the election, even though they lost popular vote. What I'd like to say on this is the way the system works for the Electoral College is that if it's extremely close in popular votes, the electorals will, the person who has the most states with the largest electoral votes will win the election. This does not mean that those states have the more power in the election. It just means that the particular person who did not win in the popular category managed to spread his support further throughout the country to different states, more diverse locations. Therefore, he was able to achieve more electoral votes. So the system isn't really cheating the winner of the popular vote out of a victory. The more sound way of saying that would be it's just saying who is the furthest support around, regardless of the numbers. And now, I would just like to talk about the workability of removing the Electoral College. And to start, as my partner said, we'd need to make a constitutional amendment, which isn't likely due to the fact that, according to Article 5 of the Constitution, you need 2/3 of the House to agree on it, and then you need 3/4 of all states to be in agreement in order for it to pass, which isn't likely. But say something like that is put into motion. In order to set a constitutional amendment into motion, you would need to have costly campaigns and long-run campaigns that would waste a lot of time and money. And, if it didn't pass, then it'd just be money that could be spent otherwise on more pressing issues. It'd be... and there's still, that overwhelming likelihood that it wouldn't even pass, so money could be used in such more productive ways than running a campaign to make a constitutional amendment to abolish the Electoral College, a system which has overwhelming support throughout the states because, as I said, the traditional bounds of it don't make that much difference. Actually, they do. It's 200 years of American history that a lot of people support. And now, going off of the workability of removing it, well, my opponent said that the Electoral Colleges tends to give the smaller states more power in these elections, but without the Electoral College, if it were simply on popular vote based on the whole population, then candidates would have no choice but to really, rather than trying to sway the whole nation to vote for them, they'd have to try to sway these large populous areas into voting for them, leaving out the smaller states. So then, by removing the Electoral College, you would take all of the power away from small states, which doesn't seem like a fair transaction. And just to give you an idea to quantify this population difference that some states have, as of 2008, the population of California was counted at 36,756,666 people by the U.S. Census Bureau. And that population dwarfs the population of a state like Vermont, which is a mere 2,100 people, according to 2008. So if this were taken into account in the popular vote, then a presidential candidate going off just basic logic would try to sway California much harder than he would try to sway Vermont. And then my opponents also claim that due to this Bush versus Gore controversy that occurred in 2000, the Electoral College showed its faults, which, just let me tell you about that event. give you a little story about it. When the Bush versus Gore controversy occurred in 2000, what happened was, in Florida, a lot of the districts suppressed votes, and there was a lot of corruption, which is why the numbers didn't add up in the end, which led to them having to do a huge recount in Florida. And this was only on the electoral, on districts electoral scale. Imagine this on a national scale. A recount on the national scale would simply be unrealistic, because those are millions upon millions of votes nationally that would need to be painstakingly counted. And even if one, they'd have to create a whole new bureau of standards for the vote counting and to make sure everything's right. And if even one portion of that bureau is corrupted in any way, the whole thing would be null and void, because no matter how many recounts, there would always be that one corruption, which, when dealing with millions of votes, would prove ineffective. And so the negative side simply says, to remove the Electoral College, there aren't really enough issues with it to merit a change, and the workability of the change doesn't seem like it can happen. There's just too many variables to be run, and there's too many votes to be handled, that it would lead our nation to fall into chaos. And one last point that I would like to make is, without the Electoral College, our two-party system would no longer function in the same fashion, in that third parties would have more power in these elections. And as my partner said, the issue with this is that these third parties could use domination, could use all these almost, I hate to say it, terrorist type tactics in order to dominate the competition and make sure that their voice is heard, and thus would result in a lot of chaos and corruption in our electoral system.